Hey, everybody. Welcome to another special NBA draft version of Bill Roden on Sports. I'm Bill Roden, fresh from the NBA Finals here in an undisclosed location, but I'm home uh, and happy to be here, going back and forth between Indianapolis and Oklahoma City. It was a fun adventure, and I drove back and forth. And it was cool, series, but we'll chop it up a little later and chop it up with my friend and co-host, the great Jamal Murphy. He's got a towel. Look, man. You
No, I'm just hot, Bill. It's hot. It's 100 degrees. It cracked 100. Um, and I'm one AC short. You know what I'm saying? I'm trying to survive out here, Bill. But it's great seeing you. Great to see you back at in New York. Yes, it was you got to say it was a great finals, seven game series.
yeah,
I know it was two small market teams, and so I don't know what the ratings were, but
right.
as a
Well,
as a basketball, lifelong fan and all that, I appreciated it. But maybe I missed a game here or there, or a quarter here or there.
it
I
was
don't know.
good. And then, of course, in the middle of it, the NBA is major. It's funny, man. The NBA has this major thing, and they're dropping all this news. First, there was a trade. There was a couple trades, right? The first trade was between Orlando and Memphis.
Oh yeah, that's right. Desmond Bain was
Desmond Bain
traded
got
to
traded,
Orlando.
and our guy, man, Crystal Anthony's son, Cole Anthony,
That's right. He was in the
part of
trade.
Trump. I want
Yep.
to have her on the show at some point, just because it's always a first for somebody when they first get traded.
Right.
It's always a first. When you're with this team and all that, then suddenly they put you in a trade and all the stuff that goes through your mind. So there was that trade, and then before Game 7, the Durant trade is announced.
That's right.
Durant going from Houston to I'm sorry, to Phoenix to Houston.
Yep.
You
Yep.
know, and again, you're Jalen Green from Houston, and just a couple of months ago, man, they talked about you the second coming.
Nope.
You in commercials and all that. Well, you can still do commercials. You just have to do it for Phoenix.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. So So what do you think? But seriously, man, you're a hoop head. You like hoops. And then of course before the final, the Knicks, of course, having big headline. They filed Tom Thibodeau as
Right.
his reward for getting the Knicks further than they've gotten in years. They said, "Oh, great, good job, Tom. You're fired because we lose money when we're too good. We don't want to get to the championship because that creates too many headaches. We sell out. I'm talking about the Knicks. We sell out anyway. They're gonna come because it's the Garden and all that. We don't have to win championship. In fact, it's worse if we did because now we got to start paying people and all that. Let's just continue to be kind of flirting around with mediocrity, because that's what the Knicks fans like. They like agony. They like to bemoan their fate, So, but
Yeah.
what do you think, man, of all the event, all that stuff?
I mean, I'll start with the finals. The final, like I said, it turned out to be a pretty, a riveting finals. Went 7 games. All the drama. OKC, young team, Shea Gilgeous Alexander, SGA, announces himself to the world as being that next NBA superstar, at least in NBA terms, we could call him
Megastar.
megastar NBA wise for
Right.
people who know the NBA. He's probably as big a star as you could be right now. So a new team, OKC, new star SGA comes through, gets it done, and Indiana put up a huge fight. And I think if Halliburton doesn't go down with yet another Achilles injury, as you know, Bill, I tore both of my Achilles.
Wow.
Just playing pickup ball in my 30s.
Wow.
but,
Did you pound on the floor like he did?
no, I was trying to figure out what happened. What just happened? I didn't know. It looked like he knew what happened.
Yeah.
And that's a whole. We can get into that a little later because just the whole thing with playing with a calf injury and all that stuff, and then leading to that. But for Indiana to make it a real series, I felt that I thought that they were getting disrespected going into the series. People giving them no chance. OKC in
I
5.
gave them no chance.
I know, but you weren't alone, Bill. It was like I kept everywhere I turned. It was OKC in 5, OKC in 5, and I'm like, I just don't understand. I mean, look what they ran through the East. They beat the best teams of the East. But so I was happy that they made it a real series, and I thought, and for some reason, I'm neutral in terms. I didn't really have a dog in the fight, but I found myself rooting for Indiana for some weird reason. I don't know why. And I thought they would have had a chance in that game 7, but obviously Halliburton goes down. They kept it close for a half, and OKC wins it. I'm not saying OKC doesn't deserve it. Obviously they do. But on the other side of it, the two small market teams. This is, of course, what the NBA wanted. With all the salary cap changes, the CBA changes, the aprons that everybody talks about, making it tougher for teams to collect 3 superstars or pay 3 superstars and still have a team around them. The NBA kind of wanted this in terms of giving everybody a chance to win this thing. But from what I hear, the ratings weren't great, and I don't know. Even me, as I was joking in the beginning, I wasn't all that excited about the matchup for whatever reason. And I'm a true basketball fan.
Why, as a fan, why weren't you excited? I mean, would you have been more excited had it been Boston and Dallas, Boston and the Lakers?
Probably. I don't know. And maybe it was the lack of star power, particularly from Indiana, maybe. Because like I said before the series, I thought it was a fascinating series. 2 teams playing their best. They're both deep and they play a lot of guys. But I found myself during the finals, like half watching until the 4th quarter, or I cared about who won and what happened. But there was a lot of
you weren't riveted.
Yeah, I wasn't really riveted. But I at least I'm one of the people. I did watch. Pretty much I watched every game.
Thank you, Jamal.
Yeah.
Did you think last year's series between Boston and Dallas was better?
I feel I was more into it, but I was rooting for Boston.
It was Tatum and Brown and Luka Doncic.
Yeah, it was Tatum, Brown. Tatum versus Luka Doncic, Luka
Kyrie.
Big stars. I think so even a pure basketball fan such as myself, Bill, falls victim to that kind of stuff, I guess.
Yeah. Well, I maintain that in order for Oklahoma City to overcome that, they're going to have to become title town. They're going to have to repeat next year,
right?
And maybe even go for 3, or go to the finals 3 out of the next 4 years. I think when you do that, all of a sudden OKC, the title goes to OKC, and now all of a sudden OKC becomes must-watch TV.
Right.
Because they are the vortex of winning. And I think that's the only way to overcome it. I think if this was one-off, like the last 7 have been, then they kind of go back to being OKC. But I think that if they could get back to the finals next year and get back to the finals the year after that, and people are actually looking at a dynasty, with young Shea Gilgeous-Alexander and Jalen Williams and the other guy, Chet Holmgren, is going to have he's going to have to step up. But if this guy, if Holmgren kind of steps up, they've got this 3-person relatively homegrown thing, and they win the next 2 or 3 NBA championships, I think then they will get what we call their due. They'll get their due. But that's what they're going to have to do.
Yeah, and then you'll have people hate watching,
right?
Because they'll just be tired of them rooting for the other team to beat them, and they do have a chance at that because, like you mentioned, Jalen Williams,
24 years old,
24. Chet Holmgren's probably like 21, 22.
He's 23.
He's 23. He missed the whole year. Yeah, I mean, and Chet, and for me, Chet Holmgren, I've been watching him since he was in high school. He's going to get better as long as he stays healthy with that frame, with that 7'3" skinny frame. As long as he stays healthy, he will get better. And no doubt Jalen Williams is going to continue to get better. You even start to hear the comparison for Jalen Williams to
Scottie Pippen.
Scottie Pippen, and it sounds crazy, but I thought about it.
But does that mean Shea is Michael Jordan?
Yeah, he's the. I mean,
Come on.
he's the Michael Jordan of this year, maybe,
Of this era.
Of this era. He does some things that reminded me of Jordan in terms of like his first step quickness, but he's not the ridiculous athlete that Michael Jordan.
Man.
Come on,
no. But but I think if he wins 2 more, and all of a sudden he's looking at three NBA championships, and he's like, by that time, see, if he does that, he'll be 29 years old.
Right.
29, 30 years old. And then ironically, then we start talking about he's almost at the cusp, He's now getting ready to go on the other side,
Right. He'll be hitting that 30, that 30 threshold.
All of a sudden, this young pup becomes this veteran. How many more years does he have left? So yeah, but it was good. I like I said, I drove. I drive anyway. I would drive to Paris if I could. So I was driving between even with the Knicks series. I drove from New York to Indianapolis. Here I drove back and forth. Indianapolis, Oklahoma City. And that part of it, listen to NBA radio and all that stuff. And the atmosphere was very small townish. Oklahoma is like a high school, like the local high school won the state title.
Right.
So that part was refreshing. And I think next year, if it's a team like Oklahoma City and they have to face the Lakers, in the conference, for the conference final.
Right.
I think they just need to face somebody with a big name.
Right.
That's what they just need to face, a team with a big name, and then beat them. Beat the hell out of them. And then all of a sudden, it's like with the Green Bay Packers back in the day. Green Bay, Wisconsin, a small Oklahoma City.
Right.
But remember, it's called Titletown, USA.
Right now, right? Yeah.
Yeah, documentaries and all that. Then you get to what? Green Bay? What? It's a little bitty town. But
right.
Because they won championships and you had Vince Lombardi, it became this legendary franchise. So, but it's all about winning. But like you said, the quality of ball I thought was excellent, and I was kind of hard on Halliburton. There was a choke sign and Madison Square Garden.
Yeah, that annoyed me.
I don't know. What do you think of him?
I mean, like I said, I got to give him his respect. I don't like everything about him in terms of how he was acting and with the Knicks, and it's a little weird, corny situations on and off the court. His father's crazy. So, but in terms of on the court, I can't. I mean,
what can you say?
What can you say? And I had never seen someone do what he did in the play, like in a playoff run like that, like 3 or 4 just like incredible last second shots, and coming from behind. Not obviously it was the team as a whole that comes from behind, but he's the guy who makes the last second shot like 3 or 4 different times.
Yeah,
never missed one of those. Like whenever there was an opportunity to win a game and he took the shot, he always made it. And then just in general, like he would have bad games that would show people, oh, he's not a superstar, right? Or even in the NBA terms, he's not a guy who's gonna score 30 for you every night, right?
You can't count on him.
But in a big game, he might get you 25 and 10 or 10, 25 and 15 or something, And
he was on his way a couple of days ago.
Yeah, he was on his way. That's what I'm saying. He had a bad game in in game 5. Everybody got on him. He comes back, even though he's hurt, he comes back, plays well game 6, and was playing really well beginning of game 7. And I thought, wow, that to me, that's what Indiana had to do in that game 7 was come out strong. Can't come out down 10 or something like that. They come out strong. I thought they're in good shape. I turned my head away from the TV, and all of a sudden I heard he had torn his Achilles. So I'm like, there goes that. But on the Achilles thing, and this is, like I said, as a person who's torn both my Achilles, people used to, and with the Kevin Durant thing, people would say, oh, well, he had this calf injury, and, so the Achilles was next. And I never really knew whether to believe that or not. And I never heard a doctor really associate the two. But after this, where he clearly had a calf injury, right? And people had even said, well, you got to be careful. You could do what Kevin Durant did, which I thought was like a one-off. You could, tear your Achilles after that. And for him to actually do that, and it's almost like he knew it. He falls to the ground, pounds on the ground, like, no, as if he knew what it was. And he knew, like, it was his worst fear almost, the way he just was banging the floor. Hey, man, I think a lot of people, because there are a lot of calf injuries. A lot of people are going to think twice about playing on a calf injury from now on.
Yeah, period. Well, yeah. I mean, like the Durant, Tatum.
Well, Tatum didn't even have, like, his came out of nowhere, I think.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, there's no hint of it.
Right. And which was more my experience. That's what I always thought, that the Achilles was just like, I never heard anybody having a sore Achilles first and then tearing it. It just goes. Yeah. At least that was my understanding. And now I'm like, oh wow, there probably is a connection between these injuries. So you better. And there are a lot of people who come up with calf injuries. So you need to chill out, or that Achilles is next. And now he has to sit out all year.
I know. Which is. I was thinking about that too. I mean, I was just thinking about it in terms of. I mean, he's a very wealthy young man,
right?
But I guess it's one of those things that, as much wealth as he's got, I guess at one level there's a consolation in that,
right?
That you got generational wealth, but you still got this torn Achilles, and you got to wonder, will you ever be the same again? Will you ever be the same player? Now, fortunately for him, he wasn't like one of these high flying,
right?
Like Ja. Whose whole game was above the rim and all that. He didn't have that kind of game. So, even with Tatum, you're wondering, will Tatum, be the same kind of player? And I guess, I don't know how you felt when you tore yours. Now, did you come back and did you play again? Or was that it? Or did you retire?
Well, at that point, I was just a weekend warrior. And they used to call the Achilles injury weekend warriors. Like, you would get over 30, you keep trying to play basketball like you used to, but you're only doing it on the weekends. You're not, so your body's not really ready for what you're about to, put it through. And it was like a thing, like, 30 plus dudes go out there and tear their Achilles. And then, of course, I was not a professional athlete, so I didn't have to, I wasn't out there really rehabbing it. I just took the couple months that insurance gives you of physical therapy, and insurance. You know how insurance is; they give you the bare minimum. They gave you like 3 weeks of physical therapy. I did that. So the funny thing is, it's not fun. I mean, it's funny in retrospect. I did the first one. It's a long recovery. You can't. I mean, you're in a cast for months, and then the boot for more months. You can't. You got to sit. You got to buy a chair for the shower. Like, it's just crazy, right? So it's a long rehab. Then when you finally walk, it's almost like you have to start from scratch, because you can't even, like, you just can't imagine. The Achilles is so important. You just don't know until it's gone. Like, you can't do anything with your foot so you almost have to teach yourself how to walk again, how to put pressure on your toes. You can't get on your toes. So, there's all that. Now when you're a professional athlete, it's you got, you're on it from the start. You got people pushing you. And now it seems like people are coming back from it much better than they used to. I mean, Kevin Durant, you couldn't really tell a difference, even though he wasn't a high flyer either, but he came back pretty solidly from it. When he got back on the court, he was playing. He still was scoring 30. It didn't seem like a huge deal. I see football players, running backs coming back from it in like 4 or 5 months. So they're doing. There's the medical aspect of it is much improved. There's no question. So I do think now people can come back pretty much full strength from it, but it still takes a year.
Yeah.
You know, and you have to be diligent. But all these athletes are used to. I mean, you don't get this far without being a hard worker and dedicated to your craft. So you just have, that goes in overdrive for the rehab.
Yeah, it was unfortunate. So when you tore your Achilles, were you out the house? Were you working? Were you a professional? Yeah.
Yes.
See?
Yeah, I was at. I mean, I remember I was like, I tried to go back to work. I was on crutches on the train.
Look, they didn't rob you.
on the subway. You know, it was
that's
terrible.
Murder
It was
on
terrible.
the New York City subway on crutches.
Oh, terrible. I mean, it was just terrible. And it was like I had to come in a couple times, like once a week or a couple times a week. I tried to do that. It was better once you get in the boot. It's a lot better because you can walk around with the boot. But the funny thing was that so when I got over that first one, and I think it was the first or second time, I tried to play again. I was playing like pickup basketball at the Y against some younger kids. And, I told myself, I'm just going to go out there and shoot jumpers. I'm going to take it easy. But then these kids started beating me. I don't know. They might have even been talking trash or something. And I took it personal, tried to drive to the hole, and boom, it's the other one. I go down, and this time, because Achilles are funny, like most people, you don't know what happened. Like you just go down. It feels like, you go down. It feels like someone just kicked you in the back of your heel, right? So like the first one, I was like, this was because I had seen somebody throwing a football in the gym the first time I did it. So I was like, did someone just hit me with that football? And they're like, nah, man, you just went down. And so the second time when I went down, I was like, oh, I knew what it was. And I was like, oh my God, I can't. And it just happened to be like a month or so before my wedding, a couple months before my wedding. So I got married in a boot. I jumped the broom in a boot.
You're lucky you didn't hurt your knee. Oh,
exactly. So it's a nightmare.
God. Unbelievable. Yeah, I never had a toe, but I had a strained what do you call it, rupture tendon, and it felt the same thing. Somebody like a broom hitting you on the back, and you're right. I mean, I was like, fortunately, it wasn't torn, but it was still like you couldn't walk. You had to I had to do therapy and the boot and all that kind of stuff, man. And I remember maybe before that, I was playing, when I was younger, I played one-on-one with one of my best friends. And we used to have these wars, man. I mean, just wars. And I remember my father was up visiting me, and he saw me and Reggie play. And this is why I was with the Times. He said, after we finished, he said, the New York Times does not pay you for doing this, because we were like just beating each other up and sore. And I thought about it. I said, you know what? You're absolutely right. So I think soon after that I may have retired. But
I got friends who I played basketball with, that in my childhood, and one of them is a doctor now. He won't even play like out of fear of a jammed finger. He's a surgeon, So so you can't play around anymore. That's what I mean too. It's like it's different. These guys are professionals. This is their life. This is their job. So it's also the team is going to invest a whole lot of money to get them back.
What they did with him just to get him ready for Game 6, hyperbolic chambers and all kinds of other stuff that we probably don't even know about.
Right, exactly. But it took a toll, right? It did. The body is the body. He played with it, and it obviously had something to do with.
Now, speaking of medicine, so when I was in OKC, I went to a Starbucks, and I've always, at this point, I'm trying to be careful with my knees because arthritis and all that stuff.
Right.
So I went to the Starbucks, man, and they had this rubber matting, that they put there, and I went there and I stumbled and fell. And it's so funny. as I was following, when you're younger, you have so much confidence in your balance. You say, I kind of got this, but I kept going, you know, and I fell, and guys come up, sorry, are you okay? That kind of shit,
Right, right, right,
feeling all
right,
pathetic, you
right,
know. I fell. Then, of course, you're embarrassed. You try to play the shit off. Yeah. I fell, but I fell. I hit my knee and all that stuff. So then I was like, "Damn, man!" I was, kind of hurting. And then I went over to the counter, and the woman was, "Well, sir, you sure? Do you have to fill out a report?" And I'm like, "No." So I,
right.
it was hurt, but I didn't do anything. And then about 2 days later, man, the knee swole up. It started hurting and all that. I mean, it was like, "Damn, this 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 is like hurts." I'm sorry I didn't sue Starbucks, but
That's right. I mean, you still have time, Bill. The statute of
yeah,
limitations is
I
not
don't.
up.
Well, you're a lawyer. I should. Maybe I should call you. So then, you know, I was what was it? I was visiting my daughter and them, and then, like the knee it would start swelling up, man. It was like swelling. I tried to put ice on it a little late. Started, you're younger. You just kind
Right,
of sit down, and then the next day is over. So man, it just hurt, hurt, hurt,
right.
hurt. So finally, when I went back to Oklahoma City, I said, man, I ain't dealing with this. So I went to this clinic. I went to this Mercy Clinic in Oklahoma City. And I went there, man. They did
Mm,
x-rays and found out, they told me, oh, man, oh my God, you got this. Well, anyway, the guy ended up draining my knee. He drained the
wow.
fluid out of my knee. And then he gave me a cortisone shot. And man, knock on wood, I'm feeling like not necessarily brand new, but kind of new.
Well, don't try to play on it, Bill. That's all I gotta
I'll
say.
go out and run a lap. Yeah.
No, no, just take it easy. Don't try to play on it. Don't play Game 7 on it. Just,
I feel great now. I can
just
go,
relax
coach.
and be
I
happy.
can go.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. That's what they do. They give you those shots. You feel great, and then your
Then
body's
afterwards,
like,
you
no,
play.
no,
Then the next day,
no,
you can't get
no,
out of
no, no.
bed. But you
That's
did it
right.
for the
That's
team.
right.
By the way, you're traded.
Right. And of course, Halliburton said he would do it again and again
I
for the
bet he will.
team.
I bet he will.
I mean, Game 7 NBA Finals is a little different.
Well, I mean,
You
you have
know,
to figure. And the thing I thought that was most impressive about that moment was when Shea came over to him. Because he saw, because actually it was, when Halliburton stumbled, he coughed up the ball, and of course it was Shea who,
right,
like, converted the other end. And then he saw he came back, and we asked him about it after the game. It was very sportsmanship touching like moment. Just show you who this guy is. I mean, not saying that Draymond Green wouldn't do it. I don't know if Draymond wouldn't. You know,
he might. It depends on
maybe
who got hurt.
well, he wouldn't do it if he was what's the boy, Jordan Poole.
Go Bear. He
Yeah,
wouldn't
go
do it
Bear or
with Go
Jordan
Bear or
Poole.
Pool.
He wouldn't do it.
No, but you're right. Shea probably
Yeah,
do it
that's
for
just the
anybody.
kind of guy he is. He said, "You okay?" Well, he said, "Well, I knew he wasn't okay, but But I guess you
Right.
just, as a competitor, and the idea with all these games we watch, man, the idea is that you lease your body to these teams. That's the deal. You lease us your body, okay, and we're going to pay
Right.
you for it, but you lease your body, and hopefully you won't
Right.
get dementia. Hopefully you won't get crippling injuries where you can't even walk after you're 50 years old. But that's the deal. You
Right.
lease your body. You'll be able to buy houses and set up your family for general. Well, even if you can't play with your kids.
Yeah. You'll be famous for a few years. You'll get some
Yeah,
perks.
yeah, but yeah. So that's just the deal. So the parade was today. I think
Yeah,
I
I
left
saw some
today. I
clips.
said I
Mhm.
ain't staying for the parade.
You
No, man.
ain't staying
I
for that.
see. I
You ain't
get
staying
it.
for
I get it. All good. I don't need to stay for the parade.
right.
Um, but yeah, man.
But what was your? I mean, you were there, like I said, driving back and forth. But what was your overall take from this year's finals? Like, was it SGA, you know, becoming a star? Obviously the Halliburton SGA thing. But what was your overall take?
Well, yeah, it
Coming
was
away from
exactly
this.
that. Just seeing this emerging, seeing these two young stars emerging. It wasn't like last year when you had Tatum and Brown, because they and
Hmm.
Luca and Kyrie, all those guys had been stars for a while. So it was a whole different vibe. These were two guys, Halliburton and Shea. Although Shea was MVP, but he was, he really had to earn it. This was sort of his
Right.
earning it, and Halliburton was still trying to prove himself. Fucking people like me, say, "Oh, well, do it again. Well, can you do that?" You know, so it was
Right.
exciting in that extent. And I know for people who love basketball, and I wouldn't say I love basketball. I love,
Uh,
I really enjoy the NBA Finals because I think unlike March Madness, there's no luck. You're not going to just get hot one night and then win the championship. You're going to have to like.
are you saying you don't love March Madness? Come on, Bill.
Well, I
You're a
like I
college
like
guy.
March, but it's a whole different vibe. I mean, March Madness is like
No, no,
sudden, and you got who won this year? Wait a minute, don't tell who won the national championship.
you won't. You're not going to remember. I
Whoa,
promise.
whoa, 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 whoa! Give me a
Because
hint. Give me a hint. It
oh,
wasn't it wasn't UConn because UConn
it's
got.
a it's a team. It's a
Oh,
team from
Florida, Florida.
the South.
Maybe that's why I forgot.
Yes, yes,
Uh,
yes, yes.
yeah,
Exactly.
but I thought that the NCAA Final Four was great. But the nature of it is
Right.
different. It's you lose, you're done.
Right.
Where if Florida plays
Right.
Houston and the best of seven, I don't know. That probably would have gone 7 games too.
Right. But I was thinking about this too a little bit. But the format, like you hear people say that, anybody can win one game. This is, that's why it's best out of seven. But it doesn't bother us in the NFL context or the college football context. I know the sport is different, but it's still the same premise. Like it's one
Right.
game, right? Anything
No,
can
no, no,
happen or
you're
no?
right. I mean, but you know that in football, you just can't play a city.
No, I know it's physically
Nobody
impossible
will
to
do
do
that.
that. I'm saying, but it's
It's still
still
one
one
game. You
game.
could be off.
You know,
You could be off one game and it's over. Like Kansas
right?
City was off one game
Very
and
off.
got destroyed. But I
Right.
guess you just take it,
Right.
but that's exciting too. And the best of seven
Right.
is exciting. The best of seven is
Right.
group. This year, I know last year, most playoffs, I will stay east. Last year, I may have gone to Dallas when it looked like Boston was up. I think they may have been up 3 games to 1. And I went to Dallas. I thought they were going to. That's when Luca had a great game, and they sent it back to Boston, and they
Mm-hmm.
closed them out. But for the most part,
Mm-hmm.
you know, I may stay with the closest team. But here I went back and forth, and I told a lot of guys who've been doing this for like 20 years. I mean, it's like really a grind, man. Although this is the first one that went 7 games for a long time,
Mm-hmm.
but just the sheer back and forth of the late games, and then you jumping on a plane, and then you're there, and then you jumping back on a plane, you're coming back. But the basketball was very good. Uh, the
Right.
competition was good, and again the teams. Uh, there were no real prima donnas on either team. I mean,
Right.
last year,
Right.
Kyrie and Tatum and
Right.
Brown and
Luca.
Luca,
Yeah.
it was just star-studded celebrity. Here, the only celebrity really was Shea, and he didn't really come off like that. I mean, I found his press conferences to be very thoughtful. In fact, me and Mark Spears and Sheila Matthews, we did something um, after each game for Anscape. We did a talk back, and then on off days,
Mm-hmm.
one off day we went to um, Oscar Robertson's gym, Crispus Attucks High School in Indianapolis. Oscar Robertson went to high
Mm-hmm.
school, and we did a thing. And Shea Gillis' father joined us, and it was very cool. We had a nice conversation, and
Right.
so all in all, man, it was like a really good journalistically, which is the only way I'll judge things. Journalistically, it was a good assignment, and
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
it was good. Went 7 as it should have gone. Now we
Right.
move on. Now the parade, and then tomorrow I'll be at the draft. New blood coming in.
Yeah, you'll be at the draft tomorrow. You got Cooper Flagg is going to be the number one pick
Now
going
here,
to
do you think?
Dallas.
I was thinking about writing this essay. I'm not sure because in this climate you got to be careful. You know, will Cooper
Oh,
can Cooper Flag do for the NBA what Caitlin Clark did for the WNBA? I don't know did for because the WNBA the NBA is just much more established. Will he? Will there be the Cooper Flag impact effect like there was a Caitlin Clark effect?
that's a good question. I mean, he didn't. He wasn't even as great as he was. Cooper Flagg was. He was not as popular as
Oh,
Caitlin
not
Clark was
on her
in,
worst day.
in college. In college, like in college, like she was even when she was at Iowa, right? She was like extremely popular. Like she took over the women's basketball scene. I mean, maybe it's because the men's basketball is so established. You have your established stars already. I don't know if Cooper Flag can do that. At least
There's a
right
long
away.
line.
Now, but if Cooper Flag has a great rookie season, and it looks as if he once he get you got to NBA you got to prove it. No matter what you did in college, if people want to see it, on the court in the NBA. If he goes out there and proves that he potentially is a top 5 guy down the line, then you might have something in terms of him rivaling Caitlin Clark. So if he goes out there and shows that he's the goods, as they say, people who are little ambivalent about him now, I could see him getting a hell of a bandwagon if he
Yeah,
starts to play well
yeah,
on the
yeah.
NBA.
No, yeah. If by the All Star break, people are like, damn, it's who, forget
Yeah, if he's
Luca,
out there.
forget Jokic. We finally have a homegrown American white star. Uh,
Yes, and I do not think you can
oh well,
underestimate.
I mean that's the bottom line of Caitlin Clark is that she's a white woman star in a league dominated by black players. Whenever you have a white player dominating what's perceived to be a black sport, the PR machine and this undergirding of "Make America White Again," that thing kicks in, and it kicks in, and people don't want
Right.
to talk about it. I'm listening to these serious NBA shows in the morning, and Frank Isola, who I like, I mean I respect a lot, known him for a long time, but he really taps into that. He really waves that
Right.
flag. You know, the
Right.
Caitlin Clark flag. The whole.
Right.
And I think that flag will have there's a much longer line. But trust me, if he becomes like Larry Bird, then
Right.
all that's it won't take
Right.
much.
And that's the thing. I think like I want to say to these people's credit, like the gang that gets behind them, they do like Larry Bird
Right,
was great. Like he was busting people's ass
right.
out there on the
No,
court.
no, Larry Bird was great.
You know,
Jerry West
and,
was great.
and
I mean, even people like certain.
yeah, and Caitlin Clark
Right.
is great. For at least right so far. Like we'll see we'll see if she can keep this up and get better and better. But she's been great
Yeah.
so far. So yeah, I'll give him that. Like at least it takes. It's not like they're getting behind some average
Right.
player. I think they understand it takes. But if he shows he's great, the bandwagon will
Right.
be there.
Well, it's
Okay,
like how with
big time.
Jokic. The problem is not giving people their due. The whole Great White Hope thing. By the way, somebody, Kyle, our friend of the program, Kyle, sent me a clip where
Yes.
apparently Halliburton called after T.J. McConnell had that great game. Great thing.
Yeah.
He called Halliburton called him Great White Hope. I know, man.
That's
Did
funny.
you
That's
really do
funny. That's
that?
pretty funny.
But I think
Yeah.
that thing kicks in. So it's not enough just for you to be great. You got to be the greatest of
Right.
all
No.
time, the greatest ever, the greatest.
And, and then comes
Right,
all the bullshit, like the complaint, like the hating the
right,
other person, hating the rivals, talking about he's not, he's being treated he's being
right,
mistreated. You know, they're
right,
picking on him, like whatever, like oh, that fight, turning a regular NBA WNBA fight into something
right.
more than it is, and especially now with Twitter and all the social media stuff, it's even worse. Could you imagine if like Larry Bird back
Oh
then we had
boy,
Twitter
he
and all
might
that
be
kind
the
of stuff?
president. Well, I mean, bad thing, but you know,
Right.
but
Yeah. He'd probably be a better one than
yeah,
the one they put there.
he can shoot
Yeah.
a jumper. But
Exactly.
but yeah, so we'll see. We'll see Cooper Flag. I mean, it'll be and he's not going to a terrible team. Yeah, but
Right. Going to a
yeah,
good situation.
Kyrie
Um,
hopefully Kyrie will be
yeah.
back by
A good coach who's with NBA experience at the
yeah,
highest level.
Anthony Davis is coming back.
Anthony
Yeah,
Davis is there. Yeah, I think and I think I've been another guy. Now that I'm watching all these high school kids, I was watching Cooper Flagg since he was 16, 17. And I was like, and I can't lie, at 16 and 17, I was like, yo, this
yeah,
kid is great for that age, right? So, and then he was great at Duke. He's a little understated.
yeah. Which is what you
That's the
kind of
thing
like
too.
about
Like
me. He seems like
yeah,
he seems like a pretty decent guy, down to earth guy. He's not out
yeah,
there tooting his own
no
horn.
question.
You know,
No, and even his style of play, like he's like he's an all around
right,
player. He does like he's like he makes the I hate the cliche, but he makes the right play. Like he really he's like LeBron almost like people get on LeBron because he wasn't always taking the last shot or taking all the shots. Cooper Flagg's the same way. Like if he's gonna pass the ball, he's unselfish. He's gonna rebound. He's gonna block shots on defense. He's gonna play hard D. He'll hit. He's gonna score his points. I know he's white, but he's a great athlete.
right,
On top of that, so you know, um, I think in the NBA he might even be a better NBA player than he was a college player because he'll have better
right,
players
right.
around him.
So it'll be very exciting. The draft will be exciting. Any of the guys being drafted who you followed on your
A
up next?
bunch of a bunch of them. And there's one guy in particular so the Nets, my newfound team, the Brooklyn Nets, they have like 4 picks. They have, because they're terrible. They have 4 picks in this draft, and there's a kid, Derek Queen, who for some reason has dropped in the mock drafts. We
Is
don't
from
know what that
Maryland?
really means.
Yeah,
Yeah, the kid from Maryland, the kid from Baltimore who
yeah,
hit
yeah,
that
yeah.
last second shot, said I'm for Baltimore. So he has personality, but I've been watching him since he was about we had him on the Up Next podcast when he was like
Really?
14. 14
Wow.
or 15. And so ever since then I paid attention to what he was doing. He went to the same prep school as Cooper
Is that
Flagg. They were on the
right?
same team. Yeah. And but he went to Maryland. He was the Big Ten Rookie of the Year. He's 6'10", do it all kind of guy. The only thing is he's not the greatest athlete. So he's a 6'10", player, black kid, who his coach said if he were white. No, he said the coach said if he were his white coach said if he were European, he'd be the number 1 pick, right? Because he's not
Right.
jumping out of the gym, right? But he does everything. He can shoot. He can pass. He's tough. He has a handle. And for some reason, to me, he's like a top 6 or 7
Right.
player in the draft, and they have him going like 12 or
Right.
13 or something like that. And I'm like, the Nets have the 8th pick. I would love for the Nets
You ought to
to grab him,
repurpose that
but
that
we'll see.
podcast. You ought to play that back when
Yeah,
the kid was 12.
no, exactly. Especially as soon as they call his name, I'll
Yeah.
put that right back
Yeah.
up.
I'll steal it. I'll
You
listen
know.
to it. I'll take quotes from it.
But yeah, I mean the kid who's going number 2, been following him, Dylan Harper, Ron
Oh,
Harper's
okay.
son. everybody's saying he's going to go number 2. San Antonio's going to draft him. He's a point guard. Was at Rutgers. Here's another story. Ace Bailey, who also
Right.
played at Rutgers. It was supposed to be Dylan Harper. Ace Bailey went to Rutgers. I know you remember this story. So it was like the top two of the top 3 freshmen in the country went to Rutgers of all places. They get to Rutgers. They don't even make the NCAA tournament, right? Both of them showed flashes of being great. Obviously, that's why they're still lottery picks, right? But they didn't do anything at Rutgers. So, but Dylan Harper is consensus number 2 pick. Ace Bailey was supposed to be the 3rd pick coming into the draft season. His stock reportedly has dropped. He has an agent.
Oh, you no workouts, right?
Right. He's the no workout guy. His agent is a black guy who had a son who played high level college basketball. His son was Sharif Cooper, I believe, who played for Auburn. Went declared for the draft. Might have been drafted 2nd round or something like that. He's from what I hear, he's an inexperienced agent, and also reportedly an ex-convict. Right? Yeah. Right. Who knows? I mean, who knows what that? I have to do my research on that, because that doesn't necessarily mean anything. But so now there's a narrative, like he has this agent who's kind of relatively new agent with a criminal background of some sort, who's advising him to not do workouts and all this stuff. So we'll see how that goes. There, some people argue, so we'll see what, I think you do have to let it play out before you make any judgments, right? Because maybe he's going to a situation, maybe they're steering him to a situation where he'd rather go 6 than 3.
Exactly.
Right. But people are quick to jump up and say, oh, well, but you're losing $6 million. The 3rd pick would make $6 million over a 3-year contract, more than the 3rd pick would make that much more than a 6th pick. So technically, but if it's a better situation, you're going to make it up in the long run. So we'll see. But that's something to watch. That situation. Ace Bailey. A lot of people were, when he first got to school, a lot of people were comparing him to Kevin Durant. He's not as tall as Kevin Durant. He's about 6'8". Durant's like 6'10". But he has like that similar game, like a true scorer, can shoot from unlimited range, can get his shot off, long arms. So we'll see what happens with him.
Yeah, well, it's always exciting, man. To find out where these kids are going to be another 5 years. I mean, tomorrow will be the happiest day in their life. Then you never know. After that, you never know.
Right. And I do it all the time. I go back and look back at drafts like 3, 4, 5 years ago, and it's a given that you would never. There's not any case where you would go back 5 years later and still draft this and still have the same order. It's not. It just doesn't work.
We knew then what we know now, but you don't.
Right.
So
you don't.
All right. Well, good, man. So draft coming tomorrow. NBA season is over, and now on to the NFL. We can talk about that next time. Aaron Rodgers in Pittsburgh with Mike Tomlin. It'd be interesting.
I just got the credential update. We gotta get our credentials application in by July 10th or something like that.
Giants?
So that's right.
The
Giants sent it. I think it's probably both. They're usually at the same time.
Yeah, well, the Giants, the Jets, I guess with Justin Fields could be your boy. Could be exciting,
Don't sleep, Bill. I know you're sleeping. It's okay. This is perfect. This is perfect for us. I've been a Justin Fields guy. You've been
you and my brother.
You've been a little suspicious of his potential.
I hope he doesn't.
So we get to see it now. We get to see what happens.
We'll see. Gerard will be in town next month. But we could do another podcast, another Justin Fields podcast. But we'll talk NFL next time. But good NFL season. I mean, good NBA season. Great playoffs.
Yep.
Durant's in Houston. Well, I'm sure he'll be unhappy.
Yep.
Um,
With
with
Udoka.
Udoka, and they talk about a 360 degree, landing on your feet. Good for him.
That's right.
So,
Do you think Brooklyn made a mistake not hiring? Remember they were going to
yeah,
hire him and
of
decided
course they
not to.
did. But for them, they had their reasons at that time. Being politically
Right.
correct. It was good for Udoka that they didn't. It's good that they did. He's got a much
Probably
better
right.
situation in Houston. Much better.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah.
That's true.
And yeah. So, all right, man. We'll tell our readers, our listeners, how they need to vote for us, or listen, or sign in, or whatever they got to do.
Yes. As always, thanks to the listeners for tuning in. If you're watching this on YouTube, hit no problem. Hit that like button. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, Bros Pod. Follow us on social media at Bros Pod on Twitter and Instagram. Bill Roden on Sports on Facebook, and you'll get clips of the show and all that good stuff. And we'll be back next week. And you said vote for us, Bill. Speaking of that, got this New York City mayoral race, which is election day was today, and it's between Zoran Mamdani and Cuomo. And I just got to say, watching these commercials, Zoran he's of Indian heritage, and when the race got close, Cuomo, of course, resorted to the classic Republican tactics of these hit ads where they show him strictly in Indian garb. Like they found every video of him in Indian garb, and that's all they show on the on the commercials. And it's just, I just had to say, it's just crazy to me how these, when Democrats are under pressure, they do the same thing that Republicans do, man. And that's one of the reasons, maybe the big reasons, we're in this situation we are in, because they just. Democrats tend to lack credibility on some issues.
That's right. Bullshit.
So, you brought up the voting. That's been on my mind.
Do they have any projections yet?
To see what happens. No, but the last polls before the election day were showing like a really.
What about your boy Adams?
I don't even. I think he's running. He's running as an independent. So this is the Democratic primary, which is usually the de facto election, right? The Democratic primary in New York City is usually the de facto election. He knew he couldn't win that, given the current state of affairs with him, right? So he's still going to try in the general election.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh man, let me go back to the bubble, the sports bubble. The sports, sports, man, is almost like an anesthetic. Like all this shit is happening. Right. Oh, let me just shoot you up with some sports. The NBA, the NFL, like you're just oblivious. You just get high. You're just oblivious to all this other stuff going on outside.
That's true. That's true. I'm not going to get into all the Middle East stuff.
Oh man, but we're in Oklahoma City. All this stuff's happening. We're like in this bubble.
Hey, at least they make you pray before the game, though. So that's good.
only arena in the NBA to start off with a prayer.
Right.
I'm like,
wow.
Okay. And with that,
God bless. God bless Oklahoma City,
and you guys continue to pray. God bless. See you next week.